pleasure for you to meet you here and to see this amazing film. It has just about everything in it. I was very emotional seeing it. You are known for several films, from Selma to Queen of Katwe, Middle of Nowhere, The Help, Red Tails, Ladies, number one Ladies Detective Agency, which I love so much, all of these, including Raisin in the Sun. Here you are both star and producer. What was that, wearing both those hats?
First thing to say, we just landed here in Chicago from LA, so it's just so lovely seeing all these lovely faces before me here. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming out. Being a producer and an actor is it's tricky, actually, because what you're used to as an actor is. And what you tend to need to do as an actor is be quite selfish about your lane of what you're doing, which is the role and making sure you get that arc right and fighting for the truth of your character. But the job of a producer is to have everything in mind: the budget, the other actors, the locations, the distribution, the pre-production. All of that stuff is going at the same time. And what I often try to do when I'm acting in something is at some point say, okay guys, we're about to shoot, I'm about to become an actor, leave me alone, I don't want any more conversations about the budget. And then on this film, literally, I remember saying that to my fellow producer, walking away from the production office and literally getting a text saying, come back right now, we have a problem with the budget. So, you can't really let go of it. And in what I try to do, especially when you're doing a film like this where you're playing a historical figure, is to really focus on what you're doing. A lot of the time I like to stay in character, but that's tough to remain Suretse Karma when someone telling you that we just lost one of our sets to a sandstorm. Yes. So it's tricky.
But this is very much a passion project for you, isn't it?
Yes.
How did this story come to you?
I was doing a film in Atlanta in 2010, and a producer on that film had optioned a book called Color Bar, which was about Ruth Williams and Suretse Karma. And all he did was show me the book with the picture of Ruth and Suretse on the cover. And I was just blown away by this image of this very self-possessed guy in a trilby and trench coat, arm in arm with this white lady they just looked so together, but it was clearly an image from the 40s. So there was the familiar about it and the unfamiliar about it. I just was very intrigued by the image, and then I read the book and just couldn't believe I didn't know this story. Especially as a person of African descent, someone who likes to think of themselves as being interested in history, to not know this story just didn't seem right. Movies are not only a great way to display a story like this, but it's also what really struck me about them is that their love for each other was so powerful and helped them to overcome so much. And at the end of the day, everything about it suggested that it warranted a movie.
How long did it take to get produced?
Well, movies, generally speaking, tend to take a long time, especially films like this that are dramas and that are historical. Doubly so when you have a black protagonist and it's set in Africa. I mean, there's a lot about this film that isn't the stuff that Hollywood immediately goes, oh yes, a black prince who marries a white woman, let's make that movie. No, that does not happen every day.
Well, it has within the last 6 months. You were in both of them.
And Queen I'm sure
of
that.
This one.
You get, and both of those, Queen of Katwe and this, both took a long time. And Queen of Katwe took an executive at Disney who's of Ugandan descent, who similarly wanted to see his history, his community, his experience on the screen, and that's why it came to fruition. But I had a slightly different challenge with this one, which was that 7 years ago, when I first happened upon this story, I hadn't done as many movies as I have done now, and therefore, you know, my name was less known. So even though I was very enthusiastic about not only this story, but about the idea of me playing the lead in this story, I found that I was literally the only person on planet Earth who was enthusiastic about me playing the lead in this movie. Everyone else was like, okay, we like the story, but David Alawala, you're who? So it took a while for me to gain the notoriety that would help a film like this get made.
You did go to Red Tail's producer. Was he one of the first people?
Yeah, Rick McCallum,
Yes.
who I did Red Tails with. Basically, after I happened upon the story, anyone who would listen to me, anyone I worked with who I really liked, I would tell them about it, and very soon I could discern whether they were going to be a potential good partner with whether they felt about it the way I felt about it. So virtually everyone who came on board of this film was someone I had worked with in some capacity. So Rick
Yes.
McCallum I'd met on Red Tails, Brunson Green I'd met when I did The Help. Amma Asante, who directed the film,
Yes.
I had actually worked with one of my first jobs out of drama school about 19 years ago. I'd worked with Amma then.
Now, why did you think that she was right as a director for this?
Well, when I first worked with Amma, she was purely a writer on the show that I did. I didn't know that she had aspirations to direct at all. And we had kept in touch in the intervening years, but it wasn't until I saw her film Belle
Yes.
that I thought, wow, she has managed with that film that which is a struggle with this film, which is to balance the love story with the political backdrop.
Yes.
Because a film like this, the temptation is to have all the technical, political, stuff, the archaic, antiquated politics of 70 years ago is not something that is going to connect with an audience the way two people falling in love with each other is.
Right.
And so you had to make sure that was at the forefront and the politics was sort of supporting that. And I thought she'd done such a great job with that in Belle. But also, I've learned that it's not only important to get a film like this made, it's important who is doing the making of it, because that inevitably bakes itself into the images you see, the nature of the story itself, the import given to the individual characters. And Amma and I share the fact that we are both born in the UK, but we're both of African descent. She's of Ghanaian descent, I'm of Nigerian descent. I lived in Nigeria for 7 years. She had spent a lot of her youth toing and froing from Ghana. And with a film that both shows the UK and an African country like Botswana, to me, you want someone who has a comprehensive view in order to tell the story. But also, we've seen so many, in my opinion, films set in Africa, the ones that cross over to here in America anyway, they often have an outsider point of view. They are made by an American or a European, often a white male, and that's a very specific perspective. It's a valid perspective. Those are great films, but we've seen so much of it that sometimes what happens is you can exoticize what Africa actually is.
Right.
You can undermine the part that Africans play in their own history and their own communities. So often, in order to, because we all want to relate to what we see on screen. So often what you get with directors of films that I've seen that have been made in Africa, mainly by white men, is that there'll be a white protagonist, there'll be a journalist or a politician who helps these Africans towards their goal, and which is okay. But you know, that's one perspective. This is a different perspective.
Right, and what the director Amma was saying is that she relates to this from both protagonists,
Right.
a black man and as a woman. She was equally invested with these two characters and the outsider aspect of both of them, one being in the other one's land and being an outsider, your character being in London, being an outsider, that she could fully understand that from her background.
Well, she got it fully is the thing, because not only as who she is as in terms of her culture, but as a woman as well.
Right.
You know, the scenes between the women in the film were not there until Amma came onto the film, and she quite rightly said, we need to hear from the women of this community how they feel about this white woman who's going to come in and try and be our queen. You know, what does that mean? That's a perspective that needs to be seen to bring balance to the choices that these two people make. And it's something I really learned while doing Selma, because that also was directed by a woman, an African-American woman. And after she came on board of that film, suddenly the female characters became three-dimensional. They became rich, which made the whole film richer, which made my interaction as Dr. King in that film richer. Until Ava came on board of that film, my interaction with Coretta Scott King was one phone call, and we weren't even in a scene together. And Ava quite rightly said, that doesn't make any sense if we want to understand who this man is as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as a human being in his totality. To only see him arguing with Lyndon Johnson is not going to be revelatory about who this man was. And Amma did the same thing with this.
Well,